After a week in American politics, unlike any I've seen in my life, we have assembled the full spectrum political coverage to dive into it today. Joining us is Josh Ettingermentum and Dave Weigel, here to answer the question that's on everybody's mind. How do you beat Mesmer the Impaler in Shadow of the Erdtree?
Yeah.
Josh,
go. So I'm going to get into that. This was a weird decision they made when they, for these bosses. But there's actually a summon sign, right at the start of the arena, not before it, but right when you get into it. And you can summon Hornsent, actually. He has some cool voice lines. Not as good as Egon, but, it's pretty nice. And he helps a lot.
Oh, I just sent that guy to kill Hornsent.
Oh,
I killed Hornsent the first chance I got. I'm sorry. If you don't fucking kill Hornsent the first shot that you have, you would go on birthright as a 37-year-old man. The Hornsent are the closest equivalent we've had to Israelis in the universe of Elden Ring. Their conduct, their attitude, just the first time you talk to Hornsent, when you meet all of Mikla's companions, everyone is kind of charming and interesting, and then you talk to Hornsent, and you're like, you're the biggest fucking freak I've ever met. I can't wait to kill you. And you do. And it's great. So I didn't even know that he could be summoned, much less that anyone didn't just murder him the first chance that they got.
I did his quest, and it's important for, if you're a real slow burn, Hornsent hater, because when you get his armor set, it reveals that he shat himself and he has shit in his pants the entire time.
All right. Okay. I could see the value in that. I think going back to Mesmer has incredibly cool powers. He has you get the most bang for your buck out of his remembrance. It's an incredible incantation and weapon.
Yeah.
And his voice lines are awesome. And he was left in a hot car. What else can you say about the man?
Well, yeah. I think the question that's on everyone's minds right now, what's really just coursing through the nation right now, is it legitimate for Biden to continue running for president by using the mimic tier and or summons that are available to him?
Yeah, the game is designed around it. Look, if they didn't want Joe to summon Frank Biden, his brother who looks exactly like him but slightly wider and who has a tankier HP bar, they should have written a law against it. They didn't. They clearly. Why does Frank Biden have extra lines of dialogue that he can say in front of Trump if you're not supposed to bring him out?
Exactly.
Yeah. You wouldn't have to go through all those quests if it wasn't a utility you could use in the battle.
Yeah, it's not easy to get him. You have to go through the Delaware catacombs. You have to find the crown of DuPont. That isn't easy. You have to learn the gesture that you get from visiting Beau Biden's grave, and you have to do it in front of the DuPont HQ. It's really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Will America make it through the DLC? I don't know in light of this recent spate of Supreme Court decisions. But let's just start with, like I said, this was a week in American politics. It was truly extraordinary. And I'm going to just preface whatever I say on this show is likely to be irrelevant by tomorrow, if not the time you listen to it. But I want to start with Dave. Dave, what are you hearing? What is the word now on where Biden's at? Because everything I'm reading from the New York Times is that he's hunkered down with his family, and they're encouraging him to stick it out. And this was just a blip, a bad debate, and they're trying to tamp down panic. Is it working?
It is not working. It is true that they're very bunkered. They're very bunkered. In ways though that have made things worse. Because Democrats have phones, and we know them, and we can talk to them. And anyone who's had conversations with people, I happened to be with Bernie on Saturday after the debate, and he did not sugarcoat it. One of his lines was, "Look, the president's not a very good debater. He's not a very good speaker." But everyone is going between this was awful, and maybe we can salvage it, to this is so bad that we need to switch him out for probably Kamala Harris. And only today, as we're talking, there's one Democrat, Lloyd Doggett, who represents Austin, Texas, in the House. He said that. He said he has nothing to lose. He's in a safe seat. He's in the 70s. He just said, yeah, I'm being realistic here. This guy can't win. The best case scenario for them right now is that a bunch of people say the right president is too old. We've been lying to you about how he isn't, and then he keeps running, which seems not suboptimal.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not great.
Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, this may sound stupid, but I was kind of fascinated by how like unspinnably bad it was. Like nobody even tried to say, oh, he told the truth or his policies were good, which is rare. You usually see them spin practically anything now. Like the fact that they admitted it was bad was kind of shocking to me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only guy who attempted to spin it with a like newish turn of phrase was Theo Bungler. I was shocked. I was shocked when Theo Bungler said, "Hey, we all have bad debates. Like this is a conversation about a bad debate performance, not the most shambolic and old flashing HP bar candidate we have ever seen in the history of presidential politics since they've been televised."
Yeah, a 90-minute medical episode.
Yeah, bad debate is not a phrase that really covers or summarizes any of this. That's really, I don't know. I don't know if that was a bungler like trying to shank Biden or what, but like it was just, it was a very pathetic attempt that I don't think anyone really bought.
I was in Atlanta for the debate, and they separate out where the candidates are from where the media is. That's pretty normal. They have the surrogates come in the room afterwards. And so before the debate, I ran into Gavin Newsom, and one of the questions I said was, hey, is this going to end the year of speculation that they're going to have to swap him out for somebody else? He said, 100%. It's ridiculous to keep asking that. And then I think really 10 minutes into the debate, it was very clear in the room. You can hear other reporters working and talking and et cetera. And it was just when he couldn't land the plane on the Medicare answer and say, we finally beat Medicare, that's when I heard 6 people around me who were all silent that go, whew, like just like sharp punch in the gut, exhaling. One of these people, I mean, the golf moment was when he just said, Jesus Christ. That wasn't me. That was somebody near me. But yeah, no one had experienced debate this bad at this level before. And Democrats are saying, yep, you're right. It was that bad, but. And that was the Obama answer, I guess.
I mean, the problem with the but here, and I just want to turn to the New York Times. This is an article by Katie Rogers and Peter Baker. It says, Biden's family tells him to keep fighting as they huddle at Camp David. And it says here, Mr. Biden huddled with his wife, children, and grandchildren at Camp David while he tried to figure out how to tamp down Democratic anxiety. While his relatives were acutely aware of how poorly he did against former President Donald Trump, they argued that he could still show the country that he remains capable of serving another 4 years. And I think the problem with that is like you can acknowledge how bad he did in the debate, but like I think you guys got it exactly right. Like this is not a bad debate issue. What has happened with this debate is that the paradigm has shifted, and now the question of Biden's cognitive capacity, like his mental and physical faculties, are now fair game for journalists. I mean, like now people are going to talk about it. They can't push it behind the curtain anymore. I mean, like we've been talking about this since 2020 at the very least, but like now the question is out there, and every next time he screws up or like can't finish a sentence speaking off the cuff, it's going to compound the problem. It's going to get exponentially worse.
Okay, if anyone could do this, if anyone would do this and not acknowledge it and think it was totally fine, it would be the Democrats. But how do you come back, not just from that, not just from everyone thinking that, like, you know, you're probably weeks away from death, from, it is literally without precedent. Not just that, but like pretty much 70% of the people who actually matter in the party going, yeah, we can't do this. He's too fucking old. He's too fucking old and infirm, and this is humiliating. How do you come back from that, from your entire party saying that they enter a QuickTime event whenever they're within 20 feet of you? If they didn't already have enough stuff, if they didn't already have enough moments of video and just baffling Biden shit, like when he said that Donald Trump cheated on him, Joe Biden, with a porn star that he was pregnant with, I believe. They now have Jamie Raskin and all these people saying this is untenable.
Yeah, it's the politics of resentment, I think. It's this is something that I spent some time in 2023 just trying to figure out how his administration worked. and like especially after Gaza, like how their foreign policy worked. And resentment is just a key word that like goes back into all of this. They see everything as like just like everything that happens to them as this story of them overcoming adversity and the haters and the doubters. And it's like really kind of funny because the arc is like nobody thought we could win in the 29 like in the primary when they led for all of 2019. Nobody thought we could beat Trump at race they led from start to finish. Like nobody thought we could do well in the midterms, which were races he didn't run in. And yeah, it like got to the point where they were trying to take credit like Andy Beshear winning in Kentucky. Like, yeah, that was all you, man.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Like there's this like the opening, like the thing. I think the moment that made me like kind of go from like, oh, he's just kind of like a regular Democrat, like kind of looking at him like the way I'd look at Whitmer versus seeing him as like this weird Nixonian figure was I got the book The Last Politician by Franklin Foer, and this is how it opens. Like I have like the first two paragraphs. It says like Joe Biden's inauguration was an image in his mind. It took hold there decades earlier, and it looked something like a brisk winter's day with a nation's establishment huddled around him, wrapping its arms around the kid from Scranton. It was a triumphalist scene, but also a revenge fantasy, since Washington's liberal elite had long rolled his eyes at him, and he knew it. The constant underestimation of Joe Biden was his diesel. It propelled him to keep chasing the image over the course of 3 presidential runs. He pursued it into his late 70s, even though diminishingly few of his peers considered it plausible, and even though his inability to surrender his ambitions occasionally verged on the undignified. That is a description of Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
If Richard Nixon like had to shoo off the visage of death every 20 minutes, if Richard Nixon had to tell the boat at the River Styx, hold on, I'm doing something.
Don't pay the ferryman.
This is issue in 2020. You guys talked about it too. The whole Democratic primary, Biden was still pretty old. He was sharper, and he did not lose his place like he did in this debate all the time. He had mediocre debates, but he wasn't just saying. He had the old. You were starting to see the beginnings of fading to a non-conclusion, going. Anyway, like he was already doing that, but he wasn't this bad. And the argument clearly, this is obvious to everyone probably, the argument was, yes, he's old, but he can save democracy. We all need to pull in to save democracy. And that's obviously been lost, where Democrats are now panicking that Biden will, by their own dictates, will destroy democracy. And they're frustrated because Biden seems to be cloistering with Hunter, among other people. The fact that Hunter's there at all, that's enough for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And saying it is worth risking democracy because I know how to do the job and I don't trust anyone, including my handpicked vice president, to do this for me. So he's gone from a elder statesman who they brought in from retirement to save them to somebody they are starting really quickly to have contempt for.
The Hunter stuff is amazing.
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned Hunter. This is from the Peter Baker, Katie Rogers piece. It says, one of the strongest voices imploring Mr. Biden to resist pressure to drop out was his son, Hunter Biden, whom the president has long leaned on for advice, said one of the people informed about the discussions, who, like others, spoke on the condition of anonymity to share internal deliberations. Hunter Biden wants Americans to see the version of the father that he knows, scrappy and in command of the facts, rather than the stumbling, aging president Americans saw on Thursday night. I mean, to that, I would add, Hunter, if you want to help your dad out here, you got to call the guy. Because if you want him to be, up after 4 p.m., he's going to need some of those moon rocks and fleet foxes that you've been keeping you up and going strong. Yeah, but then just write one more paragraph where it says, other family members are trying to figure out how they could be helpful. At least one of the president's grandchildren has expressed interest in getting more involved with the campaign, perhaps by talking with influencers on social media, according to an informed person. So they're bringing the grandkids off the bench for this, but it really is like a Biden family versus everyone else dynamic going on right now.
I love the Hunter stuff so much.
If there was a JFK deep state, I'm not saying there isn't. If there was one that was just ready to go, oiled up and attacking him, it would go after the family right now, because Biden's actually got a pretty good, I'd say, a pass from the press compared to some people who have family problems and they can't keep it out of tabloids. Hillary Clinton's ne'er-do-well brother, things like that. Biden has 2 kids. He had Beau that loss just devastated him, and because of that, people in the media fairly easy on the fact that he has 2 kids who have screwed up big time and left documents in places that detailed their various screw ups, affairs, drug addictions, etc. And this clearly hurts him. And again, if somebody, you have to kind of read between the lines of what is in these papers, who is saying what. I don't think you're ever going to say, if a Democrat say, look, a guy who raised two drug addicts can't possibly be president. But this is what is bristling now. They have really been pretty chill about the way Biden's family have. I would say this: they're embracing some Republican arguments about the Biden family, because on the right, you could say for 4 years, Jill Biden is puppeting him like a Oscar the Grouch, and Hunter's a screw up, and Obama's really running the country. There are lots of things Republicans said about Biden that Democrats said that is obviously crazy, and we're not going to embrace that. If you start seeing more attacks on the family, I think you can assume this is coming from people who are just ripping the tape off and saying, that's it. We put up with too much of this. This guy has weaknesses. We need to exploit them.
Yeah, left-wing anti-Hunterism is going to be nuts. Like, they're going to start saying that, like, he's enabling Israel like he enabled Hunter.
One thing that always, like, shocked me about, like, whether you want to call it being in the tank or what, this sort of, like, wide berth that they give Joe with Hunter stuff is the fucking paternity test. Hunter had a paternity test suit that was running from pretty much the time Biden got inaugurated until like the midterms. And it took Hunter forever to acknowledge it. It, of course, turned out to be his kid. It was probably years before anyone even asked Biden about this. And like, usually this type of stuff is usually bullshit, but I'm sorry. If Don Jr. was in that situation, we would probably be hearing a lot of questions asked of Trump by the White House press pool.
Well, we're going to take it to the convention, and Biden's natural-born heirs can fight it out.
Well, here's an example. This actually came up in 2019 because it was Peter Doocy, who is the Fox News reporter who Biden cannot stand and has cursed under his breath on mic before. And I remember an event in November 2019. The Arkansas paternity report had come out, and the way Doocy put it was at a normal press conference where everyone else is being polite, says, I wonder if you have a comment on this court filing that your son Hunter made you a grandfather again. And Biden said, only you would ask that. You're a good man. Classy. But then no other reporter followed up on it. There was just this sense that this is sleazy. He has a difficult family life. We're not going to bring this up. I mean, he has gotten the treatment that, because I think Trump exists, frankly, and because the standards all fell because of Trump. But people on the right asked this, and they've had a really great week because they're saying everything we said about Biden is going to be validated. Ha ha ha. They really just had to sit back and watch this because they were asking this, and then ABC News, etc., just didn't follow up.
Yeah, I can't believe the Michelle Obama truthers may be right.
Well, depending what sort of truth you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
I thought that's what you meant.
No. Like she would be replaced at the convention. The people unpredict it. No.
Think how funny that would be if like that turns out to be true and like we have to make a formal apology and retract our statements that Larry Sinclair was lying. Like he really did, like he really was in that limo smoking crack.
Yeah. The ultimate update to the electoral history of transphobia coming soon.
Yeah. I think many of the things they said about Biden, etc., are going to be were false and were just malicious. But this is if you deny people a nut and then they find it and they were right about something. Yeah, people start asking questions about it. It really is just Trump who has this invincibility where people will find out something was true and say, you know what, I like the way he hugs the flag, and I'm gonna be fine with this. And just Biden got a lot of that benefit of the doubt no longer really.
Just another headline from the Times here from July 1st. This is the headline is, in a staring contest with Democratic voters, Joe Biden hasn't blinked. And I love this staring contest metaphor about Biden, but I also, because he was like a lot of staring off into. He's winning a staring contest against dead space in a room right now.
Yeah, he has a staring contest every morning. He gets up and looks in the mirror.
But I mean, I think it's like that. They're just outright saying that this election is a contest between Joe Biden and Democratic Party voters. That he's going to win. It's crazy.
Doubters.
Yeah,
the haters and doubters.
I mean, Josh. It speaks to the Nixonian quality to this guy. But I want to talk about like what where do they go now? And I want to turn to Axios. This is by Mike Allen and Jim Vandehei. It says behind the curtain, Biden's salvation plan. And I just want to go through sort of like it says. The biggest argument will be that Biden won the Democratic primaries overwhelmingly, and that result is final. I love that line. I've been hearing that a lot. It's like the primaries are over, and the people chose Joe Biden. It's like, what primary? I mean, I suppose he was running against uncommitted in Michigan and a few other states, but there was no primary. I mean, this is Joe Biden. And it says here, okay, the first big bullet point here is dismiss, quote, bedwetting. The official White House and campaign line is this is much ado about nothing, that Biden works so hard that it drains his young staff. And I heard the bedwetting line immediately after the debate, and it's just like, it is egregious malpractice to use the phrase bedwetting in conjunction with an issue where the issue is the fact that people think he's too old. You don't want to remind people about incontinence when you're bringing up how he's not, he's up for the job.
Well, also, like, it's very self-contradictory because, like, obviously they're in different contexts, but you can't accuse people of bedwetting and freaking out and then go, it's this guy or the country ends.
Yeah.
Like, that immediately throws the use of bedwetting out the fucking window.
Yeah, Dave, I mean, it's a hard balancing act because they're saying, like, nobody freak out about the debate, nobody wet their pants, but at the same time, certainly in light of the recent Supreme Court rulings, they're saying that, like, this is an election that will either preserve or end American democracy or what the threadbare remnants of it. I mean, like, how are they trying to manage that cognitive dissonance?
They're just sticking to it. They're pointing to the money he's raised. He has raised pretty good money since the debate. Republicans haven't said how much money they've raised. And if you ask Democratic voters, they're about to say pot committed. I could say pot committed. Just you're at that point where the uncertainties of getting rid of the nominee are so vast that they're kind of scary. So they're really just defending in light of what you just quoted there. Hey, we had a primary. There was a chance to replace him. Nobody took it. This is our guy. There's also some second order political science worry that an incumbent president is just more electable than anyone else. I've never liked that stuff just because. I hate it. Well, like, you're on the same page that there just aren't that many presidential elections. It's not like putting a bunch of like baseball games into the Bill James machine and coming out with averages. Right. It's like there's never been an 81-year-old president ever. There is not a precedent you can point to for this. But that's kind of what they've been saying. Even that whole we're going to defend democracy argument, there's already a little bit of backfire, but something that's not going according to script on that, which is Jared Golden, who's this not even that conservative, but like a moderate Democrat in Maine, rural Maine, had an op-ed today after the weekend saying Donald Trump is going to win the election and everything my party's saying about how democracy is at risk is not actually true. And that's not the sort of thing that you say if you have a nominee riding herd on the party. They clearly, I really have never seen anything like this where like Kerry was losing at points, Obama was losing at some points, Hillary was losing at some points, but never this. The closest I came was when Hillary fainted. After 9/11, after the 9/11, after 9/11 memorial.
Well, we just don't know. Yeah. We just don't know, Dave.
But Dr. Brazil admitted after the fact, hey, I thought about whether I could replace this ticket with Cory Booker and Joe Biden, with Joe Biden at the top and Cory Booker on the bottom. I looked into it. I was really panicked. So Democrats have panicked very quietly and then admitted after the election. Maybe that would have been a good idea if we just swapped out the ticket. Like they don't have a consistent message because they are panicking. It's very hard to be consistent when you're panicking. They really are. They're not. I mean, there are times people say panic, and indeed, if you talk to the Democrats who really know stuff, it's all BS. But not this time. They really don't know what's going on.
Yeah, the Jared Golden op-ed was annoying because he was on some Reddit shit. He was like, I'm going to stand up against the old guard Republicans who are going to try to make Trump be corporate. It's like, shut up, man. That's annoying. Thinking too hard. Okay, Matt Walsh. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah, but he doesn't do that if the parties... the other thing is a lot of the reporting was pointed out Biden's just not calling people. And if you have a president who says, everyone's worried, I'm going to go down the phone tree and say, hey, buddy, I'm still the guy that could come out there and campaign for you. Even if they don't believe him, they have the conversation. It's really hard to just say to a president, stop doing this. And he's not doing that. He's been really cloistered, so
That was
everyone's
supposed to
kind
be
of
his thing.
leaving the reservation. Yeah.
I don't think even the White House is offering Biden services as a campaigner unless it's like a direct threat. Come out for us, and we're going to go to your district and campaign for you.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is already very, very dicey for Democrats in like in competitive state races. Cause I mean, like, they're feeling this is like an anchor around them. But I want to go to some of these other salvation points here. Number 2 was squeeze polls for juice. Biden's allies are circulating polls and focus group results showing the debate did little to change the dynamics of the race. I mean, Josh, you're a poll watcher. What are the polls? I mean, are there any juice to be squeezed out of these polls for Biden? I mean, everything I've seen looks pretty bad.
Yeah, there was the one immediate poll that came out, I think, by one of those daily trackers, like Morning Consult or something, that showed like no change. But we've had stuff come out since then, and it's ranged from like bad to downright horrific for him. There was the CNN poll today that had him down by 6. There was that one, and Kamala only down by 2. There was the one big kind of like list of alternatives. So they polled in swing states that had hit Biden being the worst performing Dem by far, Whitmer and actually Pete Buttigieg of all people being the ones leading in 270 electoral votes worth of states. Both if you adjust for name recognition and very close to like leading outright if you don't. So like the idea that he's lost support and that there are alternatives who significantly outpoll him isn't really a hypothetical at this point. Like, it's not like you're like, oh, look at these Senate races. None of these like candidates are particularly spectacular. You can assume it's because of Biden's age. We're literally seeing like practically every alternative outrunning him. And it's very clear right now that the issue is age. It's not ideology. It's not wokeness. It's not like any extraneous factor like Trump becoming more popular compared to the average Republican. This is a uniquely Biden issue. So it makes kind of the question of replacing him weirdly. I mean, there's obviously tons of uncertainty, but like it removes a very big problem, very specific to him that practically nobody else would have. And they'll be on their real clear politics shit. They'll like try to like look at like cherry pick some stuff to say that it didn't impact stuff. But either way, like first, like this debate was supposed to be something that outright moved you ahead. You were going to show the contrast with yourself and Trump. You did in a certain way, and it didn't work out as you wanted. But like they're trying to spin just stagnating as a win, which is just blatant spin.
And Josh, it wasn't so much. It was they wanted to make the comparison between Biden and Trump hot off the heels of Trump's felony convictions, but also they wanted to like lock in June that this is the contest. Mm-hmm. It's Trump and Biden, and like no matter how the voters feel, they may want something different. These are your two options. And like that comparison could have not have gone worse for them on both counts.
And it's rough because I saw the vision for this strategy. I wrote like a couple months ago, like the path for Biden to win. And what I noticed looking at like kind of the more really like detailed polls like New York Times was that there is a big difference between like very engaged voters and non-engaged voters, where very engaged voters were a lot more pro-Biden and non-engaged voters were more pro-Trump. And this was brought up to explain why Democrats had done so well in the special elections and why that didn't necessarily mean the polls were wrong. And a lot of pro-Biden people were really pissed off about this because it took their best argument and sort of took it away. But the way I looked at it was, well, this kind of shows that like maybe there are some reasons why the people who aren't paying attention don't like him, but it might just be because they're not paying attention, and just getting them to pay more attention to the race could move them to be more like the people who are paying attention. And so I saw like the conviction as a good sign for him. He did move up a bit after that. The debate was supposed to be like hypothetically, theoretically, could have been a real moment with the really high coverage where you get people to realize what the choice is and remember what they don't like about Trump. But instead of remembering what they didn't like about Trump, they remembered what they don't like about Biden. Not only that, but like it was worse than they even imagined. So it takes the dynamic that you could have seen that could have potentially led to him winning like kind of solidly. He wasn't down by that much in the pivotal states, and has reversed it where he's the one with the downward momentum instead of Trump. So, like, it's just the ideal outcome here is out of the cards, and that puts him in a very perilous position no matter which way you spin it.
The poll that they posted, like, to stem the bleeding and stop everyone from freaking out and bedwetting, was a poll where it's basically like, see, he's losing by pretty much the same amount as before.
Yeah.
Like, you really don't want to fucking be in that position.
After 2022, when they won like races in every single swing state, it's just like, it's insane that they think they can argue that that's acceptable. Like the Republicans are not a strong political movement.
No, their signature issue is like a unique liability that pretty much like just disqualifies like nearly half the population from voting for them, more or less. Like, it's not this unstoppable juggernaut. And I feel like all the arguments for Biden hinge on that idea that Trump is this electoral fucking monster that no one knows how to deal with.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's the only guy who's ever beaten him. Like, I guess technically, but like you also had people who won in Michigan by 11 points against his handpicked candidates.
It's exactly like what you guys said, where it's like, okay, if there were like 50 elections a year and the only one Trump ever lost was against Biden, okay, maybe. But yeah, no, there aren't that many fucking elections. I'm sorry.
There are 160 plus games in a regular season of baseball. There have only been 46 presidents of the United States. So there's not that much data to go on. I just want to go back to the list here. One of the bullet points is limit dissent. Biden allies helped orchestrate the supportive tweets by former Presidents Clinton and Obama. Those happened after furious back-channeling by allies.
That's a Biden win, getting those tweets out there. Put that on Biden wins.
But I guess, I'm staying here in Wisconsin with Catherine's family right now, and I gotta pass along. Catherine's dad asked me last night, like, what would you do if you were advising Biden? And he was like, well, let me stop you there. What would you do if you were advising Biden and you couldn't tell him to resign immediately? So, like, what are the realistic options for the Democratic Party now? Because, like, one is doing what they're doing now, which they seem to be. If Biden is in control or his family's in control, they're just going to batten down the hatches and just tough this one out, limit his exposure. But like Dave, like realistically, like what would replacing him on the ticket look like with Kamala or the convention, or what? Like, how would that process play out? What would that look like?
So he would have to resign the nomination. You know how every time they accept the nomination, they say, I accept the nomination. He just wouldn't do that. He'd say, I thank the delegates, yada, yada, but I've determined I can't run. And in that case, they're mostly picked already because the primaries ended last month. There's delegates that would meet to pick the new nominee, and they're 99% Biden delegates. There are 37 uncommitted delegates, and 3,900 something Biden delegates. So it would be basically Joe Biden's party, and Joe Biden's party would well, I'd say for two things. But everything logical would pick Kamala Harris. People bellyache about this, but one problem is that there is this thing called the Biden-Harris campaign that's been raising hundreds of millions of dollars and making all these ad reservations for the rest of the year. And if you replace that with the Wes Moore, I don't know, Mark Cuban ticket, well, that would help because he has money. But if you replace another ticket, you just wouldn't have that committee. They'd be tied up in court arguing that they can use the Biden money. The Biden money could be donated to a super PAC that then makes new ad reservations. There's all these complications. The easiest thing would be as if he just, something happened to him. I don't know why I'm being like a Twitch streamer trying not to use death words because I feel like I don't be demonetized.
Yeah, if they unalived Biden.
Yes. And to be clear, Secret Service, I am not calling for this. I'm saying on paper, those are the rules in the states. Like if that happens, then you say, all right, well, there's a running mate and they're the nominee. And so the convention there would be a media frenzy about who the VP nominee is or whatever. There are already discussions about, a lot of this is fantasy football happening right now, but the actual rules are, okay, the party does this. And you've seen David Sachs was the first person I saw in this, which I don't know what that says because his takes are always bad. His takes always make no sense. But he was kind of taking out this like self-insurrection argument. He was saying that if Democrats did that since they had a primary, they would be destroying democracy inside the party. And I read that and my eyes started to roll back in my head. So I don't think that'll be super convincing to a lot of people. I think it would be seen as, oops, a crisis, and they all defended the wrong guy for too long, and now they have a new nominee. It would be ugly, but it'd be impossibly ugly if they say, you know what? We told you for 4 years both that Joe Biden was young enough to be president and that Kamala Harris could take over if something happened. and we lied to you about all of that. So here's a new ticket of different people.
Well,
We said we said we would only serve one fucking term. What happened to that? What happened to that? What happened to any of it?
Well, technically, he just said he would be a bridge president, and you can be a bridge president while serving 2 terms. Just because he said he wasn't the future doesn't mean that he doesn't have to be a decade-defining fucking Reagan-esque figure like he wants to be at 86.
They were super careful. They would let it be known through aides that he thought about this, and then he decided not to. And it's the same reason like McCain thought about this and never did it. Because when you poll it, and every voter says, "Gosh, an old president, I don't want that," and they pull it back. But he never went on the record and said, "I'm only a one-term president." But yes, lots of people. I've met them. I meet voters are normal. They're not reading every single article about this. I met people who don't like Kamala Harris because they just don't know who she is. But I've met normal voters who voted and they thought, yeah, I thought the deal was that he was going to do it 1 term, and I was surprised that he's still the nominee. There's a lot of those people.
Narratively, that's perfect. Narratively, that's so perfect. The idea of him coming in, coming out of retirement, fixing the country or whatever, beating Trump and then handing it off, that gives him such a coherent role in history. It matches very perfectly. That's the type of thing that historians would just love. And it would, if he just decided, I think he would be relatively popular now if he just decided, he said he wasn't going to seek a second term. He would be an uncontroversial figure, to a certain degree. But and one thing that really weirded me out was that it's this one article said Biden won't step down unless he's sure that people won't see him as this quitter or he has to be sure that he'll be remembered as the guy who beat Trump. It's you already beat him. You're the president, man. People are going to respect you, second term or not. The way you get them to see you as a failure and a loser, like all your 70s Delaware columnists who still live in your head rent-free described you as, is if you lose to Trump. That's how that's how you get remembered as a loser.
Also, okay, I don't think Trump winning is necessarily the end of the country, but just on abortion stuff alone, the policies and everything are horrifying. And there is some credence to the idea that I guess it's either this or Kamala or this horrific set of outcomes, right? But you can't say that and then the reason that you're risking the election is that Biden will feel bad about his legacy if he quits.
Yeah.
Is this important or not?
Right.
Is this so important that everyone has to fucking hold their nose and just do whatever and ignore Gaza and all of this? Or is it trifling enough that we're going to risk this entire thing based on what a guy who's probably not going to be alive in 3 years thinks about himself? What the fuck?
If a time traveler went to Hillary Clinton in summer 2015 and said, "Look, I'm from the future. James Comey screws you at the last minute," very friendly ghost who speaks her language. You're going to lose the election to Donald Trump. There's nothing you can do about it. And she kept plowing. You might say, well, that's pretty selfish if she knew she was going to lose. And this is the thing where Democrats have. I think this is why this is so traumatic. A few voters I talked to in Wisconsin compared this to just the feeling they had election night 2016 was just, oh God, it's happening again, where we have everything lined up to beat Donald Trump and we're going to screw it up somehow. That's the issue, is that they know that there is probably a different way to do this, and the person saying, just trust me, and not sacrificing anything, because that would be a huge sacrifice. The democracy is so important that I'm not going to run for president again. I'm going to give up everything that I worked for my entire career. That would be impressive, and he's just not doing it. They're doing it. They're giving their money every month. There are people who want the presidency and decided not to run in the primary. Everyone else sacrificed, except for Joe Biden.
Yeah, people are sacrificing. I mean, migrants are sacrificing. They have to now live in detention centers because his fucking popularist team decided that they needed to adopt right-wing immigration policies to get a slight messaging advantage over Trump. There is the report that trans people, he might have backtracked on trans rights. Those people are going to have to suffer for Biden, but he can't be asked because it'll make him feel bad. The only actual point, argument you could make that would be somewhat coherent is arguing that he's uniquely indispensable, which was kind of the way people pushed Hillary, that she was just this uniquely competent Iron Lady who needed to be president. She was the most qualified person. And I guess that kind of she was a very singular figure. So I guess theoretically that made sense. And maybe for Biden, because he's so experienced, it's like, oh, you need him to handle these crises. You can't do that after last Thursday. Like, it's over. You can't push it.
I love the idea of Joe Biden visiting Hillary Clinton like Marley's ghost. And these poles I wear, I forged in life, Jack. But like, I mean, like on the question of like Felix, to your point about like the stakes of this election, which have been brought into stark relief by the Supreme Court decisions, like one basically overturning the regulatory state, and the other like immunizing Donald Trump from any other president from quote official acts committed while in office, and then like Biden's statement the other night where he read from a teleprompter and spoke for about 5 minutes. I think the thing that really sums it up is when he closed by saying, "I dissent." Like he's fucking Sotomayor, like he's a justice and not a politician, not the executive of the country who has power to like do something about this.
Who are you dissenting against? Your own bodily functions? But your brain saying, Joe, we're about to die soon.
But Josh, like, let me put to you the Catherine Dad question. If you were advising Biden and resigning the office immediately was not on the table, what would you be telling him now? Like, I mean, is there any way for him to continue to run this campaign, or what would a competently run just generic Democratic presidential campaign right now look like?
But you gotta like kind of think big. The thing I thought about last night was, why aren't they running like a constitutional amendment that says the presidents don't have like the divine right of kings? That could be somewhat splashy. Like, I mean, it would get people's attention. It might put some Republicans in a tough spot. I mean, it's just like, I always try to give him the benefit of the doubt whenever I like wrote about this over the past like year or so. I was like, well, I'll assume that like he's capable of doing these things. It's basically what everybody's saying. You have to give town halls. You have to give like big press conferences. You have to show that you can give like speeches and interact with people without a teleprompter. Like, you got to really go like balls to the wall. I think his schedule this week has basically nothing on it. You need to like immediately like start talking to people. Like the fact that he talked to Hunter before he talked to like Hakeem Jeffries. Imagine how he feels, because like he's facing like the least productive congressional majority in history with like majority of like 2 votes. Republicans are resigning en masse. Like he had redistricting go in his favor. Like somewhat, and like it looks like the most layup speakership of all time, and then Biden like does that, and then he doesn't even give him a call. Like, come on, like he's got to feel pretty shitty. And this is supposed to be what Biden was great at. He was supposed to be the great backslapper that Obama never would be, and he doesn't seem to really be living up to that.
No, yeah, that was. I mean, talk about abandoned Biden sales pitches. Look, you guys may like Bernie's plans, but no one's as good as at handshakes as old Joe. Just wait till he gets in there and starts working the phone. It seems like he, the moment he picks up a phone, he dies instantly.
Yeah,
he cannot complete the call.
He's like me when anyone actually calls my phone. I have a dementia like induced episode anytime anyone tries to call me on the phone these days, which you should never do if you're listening to this show. But yeah, like, so Dave, what? So you, like. People may not like Kamala because they don't know her, but like, given that she's the most realistic, sub to come off the bench for Biden, like, what is that like? Who would be her running mate? Like, who's on the short list for that? Should they move Kamala in there? And why aren't more Democrats like talking up Kamala right now? And like, what are her like? Have you like noticed anything from the people around her about how they're trying to position themselves now as like the obvious replacement as the vice president?
Oh, they're being very careful because I was talking to Matt Gaetz on debate night, and that was his first reaction. Is like, Kamala's going to be checking his pulse every time she shakes his hand. That they've wanted to. One, they know Republicans don't like Kamala and have been trying to say for 4 years that Biden is the friendly old man face on the socialism of Kamala Harris. But that kind of frayed over the years. If you go back and look at how they were attacking Harris in early 2021. It was that she was the avatar of the left inside the White House. And then she just had some specific screw-ups that I wouldn't say destroyed, but hurt her public image, and they stopped caring. They just said, this is not somebody we need to take seriously. She's never going to win. Trump will flatten her. And so the Kamala people are staying very quiet. And the polling from CNN today was like, you couldn't get anyone to talk about it because that's the sin you cannot commit. I mean, even LBJ was not going around back channeling reporters. You know who actually could win Texas? against Goldwater. But he did other things. But
yeah.
I mean, he had the courtesy to do that other thing before that. There used to be some sense of propriety.
But they're not talking about it. But you can't even get them to comment on this poll. But the theory basically is that she has been defined by two groups of people on the left who always disliked her because they thought she was a phony running in 2020 and grabbing onto Bernie's message without understanding it, which I think even Bernie would agree with parts of. And then conservatives who just think she's a joke, and you see the same loop of the coconut tree not even a gaffe, just an odd story, right? And some of the more word salad-y things about we being unburdened by that which came before, but that not what that which is.
That's facts.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's true.
Care.
I want to be like that.
The theory is that image is so lousy that she, as somebody who is young enough to be trained and do well in public speeches, that actually, if you look at her, if you look at her on the stump in the last few months, she's defensive, but usually defensive when being asked about Biden. She's not the kind of person, kind of no Democrat is, who would take a question about abortion and then somehow bring up the rape committed by an illegal immigrant and how that's a problem. There are just basic performance issues that she would fly over, is the idea. Like they won't talk about, in public she supports Joe Biden, but you don't sign up to be vice president unless you think you could also do the job and do the job better. And that's their headset. The thing though is she's shed a ton of staff over the years. She doesn't have this brain trust that's like locked up with her doing this, because she's laid off staff have left because she has just made mistakes, usually related to not prepping for something important. Like she's giving a speech and she kind of wings it instead of going to the prepared remarks because she didn't read them. That's damaging. But they're thinking now, in a short general election, could she tack that in? Probably. And then for her running mate, I'm going to be clear on that this is just Democrats kind of riffing, like Democratic members of Congress and people behind the scenes. A white male governor somewhere, of which they have a few. They got Roy Cooper in North Carolina. They have Tim Walz in Minnesota. Roy Cooper's term limited, so he's retiring anyway. Walz could run without giving his seat up. And they just say there would be somebody safe in a swing state that you can put on the ticket, which they didn't have 4 years ago. They had those governors, they weren't ready to run for president yet. Somebody like that. So it'd be, hey, everybody, here's the vice president you thought you hated. She's not that bad. Here is a white Democratic governor. You love those guys. You've been wishing we want one of those guys for years. That'd be the ticket. It's just one, probably Cooper or Walz. I've not heard anyone else named specifically, because Josh Shapiro is interested in running for president and has modeled his entire public speech pattern after Barack Obama. But I've not heard him in this mix in the same way that he would want the vice presidency in this method. But this is the thing: everyone is being. This is real Veep hours where people are real in the loop hours.
Yeah.
Where people cannot say this stuff. It makes you realize how much of normal political discourse is frivolous, because they'll riff on this stuff until it's serious, and then they do not want to be tied to the speculation. It's just like members of Congress who have no skin in the game that I'm texting with, who are like saying, "I don't know, this guy looked good on TV." That's real.
The problem with Cooper, I heard, is that if he leaves the state of North Carolina, Mark Robinson becomes acting governor, so he cannot leave the state without that guy being in charge effectively. He has not left North Carolina, I think, in years for that reason.
I'm really channeling the full Renfield Democratic strategist mindset. But they're trying to beat Mark Robinson for governor this year, and they have the attorney general who's fairly popularly running. And anything that made Mark Robinson more famous, they like that idea. Any news cycle strategy. Oh yeah, which worked great for him. I haven't checked yet what happened there. But in North Carolina, hey, a headline that says crazy North Carolina governor just made straight marriage mandatory or whatever. They're not worried about that. But they're willing to throw that. That's one sacrifice they're willing to make for democracy, is maybe a few weeks of Mark Robinson being governor.
I mean, I think at the very least, Kamala would be able to speak cogently about the Democrats' number one issue, which is abortion. So, Josh, what do you think? Are we de facto? Are we just all K-Hive now? Do we have to break out the Kamala apology forums?
I've been on that shit since like February. I like don't care. I've been an age truther for so fucking long. I can't like say it's not a little bit cathartic that this like people have finally like what I think woken up, because he was down on the polls since like September. This isn't like the risk isn't exactly new. But yeah, I mean, like I went through that article and it's like all this stuff about like him being, a lot of it was kind of like the circumstances of how Kamala even got here in the first place, which I do think are interesting. But the thing that made me interested in her, even as far back as February, is that she seemed to have kind of an understanding of the election that like a very spite-driven Biden just doesn't have. Like there was this one, like her team started leaking a bunch of stuff in February about Gaza and other stuff. That like, I mean, obviously you only leak stuff that makes you look good, but the fact that she thought it would make her look good, I thought showed a certain level of understanding. And it was like she was like saying, "Oh, I'm actually pressing for a ceasefire." Or there's a CNN article about how she met with all these governors and they all slammed Biden's campaign. And instead of calling them bedwetters and like complaining, she was like, "Okay, what do you want to do to make it better? Like, how can we work together on this?" And I read that and it was legitimately kind of refreshing. It's like, it's not like she's some kind of masterful politician or amazing candidate in a vacuum, but it's like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed woman is queen, I guess. Like,
yeah. It's in the same way that Ansbach in Shadow of the Erdtree seems like the nicest guy ever because he just has a smidgen of self-awareness and humility in a world filled with mass murderers and sex maniacs.
100%. I think that's a great comparison.
Yeah, she's Ansbach.
Yeah,
she's Ansbach just by having a normal person's. Well, I wouldn't say normal person, but like a cogent appraisal. You know, she comes off way better. I am ready to go to just dive into delusion here. Her campaign colors were the same colors of the original print run of The Wretched of the Earth. Are you ready to nuke Israel?
Yeah, her parents were Marxist scholars. She was a DA. Ansbach worked for Moog, and he's cool. Yeah. Like, people can change.
Yeah. No, yeah. People
maybe those truant kids were actually just being tricked by Mikola. You don't know that.
Yeah. Mesmer was a DA, and we all love him.
I know.
Yeah. He's tough, but fair. You know, as long as we're talking about Elden Ring again, you know, what is it? Like, you can pick up items that are like turtle meat or like a turtleneck to eat, right? Like to get some health back or whatever. Well, as long as we're talking about various meats to eat, we got to talk about the RFK Jr. story from this week because we have another election, another American election where eating dogs is becoming an issue. Once again,
he thinks he's him.
This week, Richard Nixon has been vindicated when he said it's not illegal if the president does it. He's been vindicated by the Supreme Court, and Barack Obama has been vindicated by RFK Jr. for it's okay to eat dogs. I just want to read here. This is from last year. Robert Kennedy Jr. texted a photograph to a friend. In the photo, RFK Jr. was posing alongside an unidentified woman with the barbecued remains of what appears to be a dog. Kennedy told the person who was traveling to Asia that he might enjoy a restaurant in Korea that served dog on the menu, suggesting Kennedy had sampled dog. The photo was taken in 2010, according to the digital file's metadata, the same year he was diagnosed with a dead tapeworm in his brain. A veterinarian who examined the photograph says the carcass is a canine, pointing to the 13 pairs of ribs, which include the telltale floating rib found in dogs. But so
what's so insane about this is like, okay, like I get like I think there's a coherent and cogent argument that I kind of agree with as far as like eating dogs and cats, where it's like it's no more weird at the end of the day, at least
than eating a pig. I mean, pigs are smarter than dogs, than
eating a pig, right, or eating a lamb or whatever, right? Like I think that's definitely true, but like regardless of what you eat. Regardless of the meat you eat, have you ever taken like an entire pig that was on a barbecue and held it up and be like, I'm eating this?
With your mouth open.
Not like a part of it, which would be like weird enough, but the entire carcass.
Like a carcass.
Hey, look at what I'm eating. It's so weird. He is such a fucking weird and annoying person.
He's letting this come out just like, it's not even like with Trump where he like tanked through all these scandals to become president. It's just for like 9% of the vote max.
Well, he's also the anti-Biden because it's the Kennedys who are ratting him out on this. Like, if you look at the sourcing in Joe Higgins' article, his entire family is like, "What do I got? Let me search my email." My
so
email
good.
file of dumb shit RFK sent me. Here you go.
They hate him so much. They hate him so much.
They're talking about his drug use and not current. Like he's talked about his heroin use and all that, but they're really just speculating about him as to destroy him. Like it took him a while because they were doing all these events with Biden where they didn't really say much about RFK. They just said they were sad, and they're going full October Oppo on their brother, which I haven't seen before. Not with a Kennedy.
Yeah, it's July. Imagine what they have. God.
he like unsurprisingly, there's like I don't know if you guys saw this the Vanity Fair, I think it was, article about him and the babysitter.
Yeah.
Like a pretty horrific accusation. And his response was, "I'm not a church boy."
Choir boy, I think he said.
What
He said
talking
church
about?
boy.
Church
He said
boy?
church boy.
What?
We haven't
the
even
fuck?
gotten to his ex-wife's suicide note.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty rough as well.
It's just such a weird fucking candidate because it's like, okay, what do I bring to the table? I bring the exact positions and incoherence in Joe Biden's campaign that everyone hates. The biggest policy liabilities of his campaign, I have those. I sound like shit. And I also have Trump's sexual history.
And worst issues.
Vote for me.
Worse.
And worst
Significantly
issues,
worse
opposed
than
to
Trump's
abortion.
sexual history.
Yeah, no, it's Jesus Christ.
I mean, like,
Who is this for?
He was trying to take advantage of the fact that most of the country didn't want a Biden-Trump rematch, which, sure, that's fair. That shows in the polling. And then it's kind of an indictment of him that when 70% of the country said we don't want this, 8% said, we'll settle for you.
No, this should be such a layup for like a viable third-party candidate with name recognition. Like these are not only are these two horrific candidates, they're two horrific candidates that are known qualities that everyone is kind of fucking sick of.
Yeah, Ross wins the outright majority in this year.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I hope that, like, I don't know. I don't know if it's important enough for this to happen, for there to be like a game change type book about the RFK campaign, but I hope there is one.
And a TV movie.
The last time I saw him was at the Libertarian Convention, where it was very strange. So he showed up. First of all, he has a joke he makes now about the brain worm, where if there's a crazy idea, in this case it's spying on people, he says, I don't support that. Maybe the worm ate that part of my brain, and it doesn't get a big laugh.
Oh my god!
Because people just feel it's a little too strange. So in a room of libertarians, he made that joke.
Yeah, that was
and
too weird for them.
Yeah, not a big response. And then so he showed up. He didn't really work for the nomination, and then the last day when they were voting on the nominee, he hadn't put his name in. So the party chair called him live and asked if he was willing to do it. And then he recorded a video saying, "Sure, I'm in." But it was one of those phone videos where you could see the thumb blurring out part of the image. So he just, from his backyard, recorded this video that they played on a short delay of him saying, "Yeah, please, I'd love to be your nominee." And then he lost. So this is another thing. I think the Kennedys do not like being embarrassed as much as anybody else. And I wonder how much of their willingness to share the worst stories they've ever heard of their brother came about, because he just has face planted harder than it. There's so many. I'm not going to make any joke on this. There are people who can. He face planted to a degree that none of them have when they run for office. Joe Kennedy losing to Ed Markey was kind of embarrassing. It was embarrassing that his dad had to spend a bunch of money on a super PAC and didn't do anything. But not I lost to the Libertarians embarrassing.
Yeah. Total aside, completely irrelevant, but I cannot believe the Mises Caucus lost that shit. I cannot believe they lost that nomination.
Because their nominee took an edible before his speech and then tried to... Sorry.
This is the von Mises Caucus, the Austrian Economics Caucus.
Yeah, they lost. They nominated a Reddit guy from 2012 as their nominee.
So they had this guy, Michael Rechtenwald, who they built up for years. There was going to be another podcast guy called Dave Smith who decided not to run because he didn't think he'd be a good candidate. This
He's
guy,
from
Michael
Legion of Skanks, by the way, Dave Smith.
Oh,
He
that's right.
he really is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Reginald was just more of the guy who writes the books you can buy online about libertarianism and gold, et cetera, et cetera. And he was running, and so the day that Trump showed up at the convention, he got a speaking slot right in front of Trump, and then he was able to do a press conference on stage after Trump, and he was just off it. You could tell there was something wrong. He was the guy who's normally good at talking. The rumor spread that he'd taken an edible, and then he consumed the edible. He confirmed that he took this edible before going on stage. He had no idea he was people back on. He in the press conference, he just got tired of the questions and said, "I'm going to leave," and walked away. And then the next day, to spin why he did this, he said, "I am high on liberty." And it did not work. He lost the nomination.
I'm going to leave now. I literally did that when I ran into one of my best friend's fathers when I was on mushrooms in college.
You just had to walk away?
Yeah, no, he just started talking to me and I was like, I need to leave now, and walked away. But I guess to wrap things up here, like, I don't know. Like, there's some all hands meeting tomorrow at the White House. Who knows what'll come out of that? But like, now we are in like the King Lear part of this presidency and really American democracy. And the question is, will Biden be able to determine who is the good daughter or not? And I guess I'll just ask Josh first, then you, Dave. If you had to bet, how is this going to shake out over the next week? Are they gonna stick with Biden, or are we going to see a change?
Oh boy, this is the podcast recorded and it's online forever. So I think the way things are going, for the first time, I think Biden might say that he has to make a decision for the good of the country and step aside. If he doesn't, then like I was saying, it snaps back to it's like one of those things where the lights turn on at an orgy and everyone's naked and everyone's embarrassed. Everyone in the party has said a version of this guy is too old to do it, and either he needs to get much better quickly as he ages in a month, or we have to drop him. For them to go back and say, you know what, didn't mean it. Sorry that I trashed my president and said he's incompetent. I think that's just going to be so tough that it's going to be untenable. So I'm seeing the path to Biden saying I can't do this. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. If I keep talking, I'm gonna make it boring.
Yeah. No,
I agree with that. Basically, I'd add on that another structural thing, like for like the vision here, which I also have come around to seeing, is the donors who are giving their own money to this. Like, if you reach a certain point where he's losing in like New Mexico and Colorado and Virginia, and he's refusing to step out, he's calling everybody bedwetters. Like, he is so condescending to like the donors, which is so like fucking strange to me. Like, I mean, I get like being mean to the voters or like the other politicians who you don't respect, but these guys are giving you like 7 figures, and you're like going up to them and patting them on the head and saying, "You're a fucking bedwetter, fuck you." It's just like they are really lost in the sauce of the kind of Nixonian psychodrama that I think they've been going through like for the past number of years. And if he can't really just demonstrate a display of like kind of vitality in a way that I don't know is still possible for him. Like, there's obviously the issue with the elected officials saying it, but like, fundamentally, if you can't fundraise the campaign and there's like a donor strike, rubber kind of meets the road. Push comes to shove. Like, I don't know how he can justify it, even to himself, continuing this, unless he legitimately thinks that preserving his dignity is so important here, which he might, because he's psychotic. But I mean, we'll see.
I mean, if preserving his dignity is a factor, it's hard to imagine the people around him haven't, had a serious conversation with him at this point. But yeah.
I just don't see. I don't see how you can go to convention. I don't see how you could go to convention, run ads, put your candidate out there after, again, over half the people that actually matter in the party and elected positions go, "This is fucked up. He can't be president." You just can't. I'm sorry, you cannot. If anyone would like go ahead with that after all of that has been done, it would be the Democrats, as I said at the beginning.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how you can allow yourself to do that.
Well, we shall see. Like I said, this podcast will probably be rendered irrelevant by the time it released. But Chris, sorry.
I would just like to add, for anybody who's listened to Hell of Presidents, it just goes to show you, no matter how humiliating it seems at the time, you always take the VP spot.
Mm-hmm.
Even Mike Pence. We're hear more about Mike Pence than we would have if he just stayed in Indiana, like showing
true.
up at county fairs.
He
He
probably
got the
loses
right.
that year. And then
Yeah,
we have like John Gregg speculation.
All right, we'll leave it there for today. I want to thank Josh Ettingermentum and Dave Weigel. Josh is on Substack, and Dave is at Semaphore if you want to read their coverage and commentary of this quite historic presidential election.